Well, good afternoon, actually. It's, oh no, it's evening. Is it morning there or what? I forgot.
It's quarter to 9 in the morning.
It's a.m., okay.
Yeah, it's a.m.
The
other direction? Yeah, I've been really busy. My daughter and her family are moving in tomorrow. They will be sleeping here tomorrow night, so I'm going to have 5 more people living in this house.
It's a pretty large house, isn't it? It was supposed to be a center.
Yeah, I can't have meetings here anymore. Well, the room that we used to have meetings in is now a family room.
And are you gonna have to sleep on the couch or something, or will it still be comfortable?
No, I'm gonna sleep where I've always slept. The meditation room in the library is now going to be the girls' bedroom. I've left the bookshelves up, but I've taken everything else out of the room pretty much. And my altar that was set up in that closet that I used to go to every day, that's no longer there. So
you still have the atrium though.
The atrium hasn't changed much.
So you'll still be able to go and meditate every day there.
Well, I can also meditate anywhere in the house. I mean, it's not a place; it's an attitude. You know that.
Yeah, they've been cranking up the screws here, in this part of the world as well. There's already been a confiscation of 15,000 houses. The bankers said, we want it all now, give us all your property. And so they're taking 56 houses a day, according to the news. Anybody who even owes $10 is going to have all the property taken. Because Greece is they're constantly saying that Greece is the lower end of the ladder, but it's one of the few countries where the people own property. Everybody owns their houses, their ancestral houses, and property taxes were always low here, and we are actually not under maritime law. Through some crazy twist of fate, the banking system and everything else in Greece was on a totally different system than the English maritime law system. And they can't change it without disrupting the Constitution, and they don't want to do that because that's going to create a revolution. So they tried with subsequent elections to get a majority to do so, and they have a majority to make laws, but you need a very large majority to alter the Constitution. So now they're just ignoring it. And anytime they see people trying to do something, they throw more chemtrails, the news puts out all this other stuff. It's a constant psychological manipulation. So there's people that they've put in new water lines, they've sold all the water systems allegedly, but I think they only have some of them, like the big cities, and they're going to start spiking the water for those people who have some money left, and the rest they're going to try to just throw in the street. And the Prime Minister has already said that, if there's going to be some kind of violence, he's going to call in the UN to put in law, and all these, and they have a bunch of concentration camps that they're now building, allegedly for immigrants, because they force the Greeks to take in all of the immigrants, but they don't let them go into the rest of Europe. So they're trying to set up a precedence, but they mention this stuff, then they say they detract it, all kinds of confusion sets in. But people do rise up regularly, and then the television comes up and tells the people it's all their fault. They're all lazy, and this and that and the other. Whereas I have experienced that, if you went against the politicians in those days for the way they were trying to, keep the people from having their own businesses by having subsidies and just giving people money, free money. If you went against that, the politicians went against you. So basically, people are realizing things, but it's very hard to even keep your eyes open because of all the, it's an attack. The thing that a small country, however, says is that, well, if we do revolt, they can just come in with napalm and firebomb us. And then what's going to happen? Well, other countries are going to step in like Russia, but it's not going to be for the people here. They're going to keep us suffering because it serves their factionalism. You know, we're going to be used as an excuse, like the Palestinians. One of the reasons they have the Palestinians is as an example to everybody else. And one of the reasons they hit the Serbians is to create an example, because they were the only Balkan people that basically, said no to the New World Order, or their world order. So, and they're trying to create an impression that the rest of Europe, especially, says, good, kill them all. A divide and conquer strategy. But the truth is that people in the rest of Europe are worse off than most people in Greece because they don't have their own land. Now, you mentioned in your previous video about being able to go to the country and live off the land. The thing is, they're going to come for you wherever you go. I mean, even if there's a civil war and people go underground, how long are you going to stay underground? They have satellites. They know exactly where everybody's hideout is. They can send drones, and they can just their bombs are bunker bombs. They've done it in Iraq. They can do it enough in the United States to freak everybody out. All they have to do is kill 1% of the people. Everybody else is just go crazy. So I'm saying all of this because I believe we need to get tougher on the inside in the face of the threat. Not to panic or freak out, because that's why they're making all of this public. They figured out that instead of hiding all of this, it's better to just tell people their plans and even exaggerate them. For example, the idea that Alex Jones had something before about a nuclear bomb being taken in an unauthorized manner from a military base in Texas to South Carolina.
Right.
And, they made a big deal about that, and this was a real event. There were people coming out, papers were signed, but then it was said that this bomb actually went off in the Atlantic.
Yeah, Karen has talked about that.
Yeah. The event that, is documented that the bomb actually made it to South Carolina, and then what happened, nobody knows. Even Alex Jones isn't talking about it. The trail stopped. I think that if something actually went off, a nuclear weapon going off in the ocean does not go unnoticed. Even if
Usually it would create a tsunami, wouldn't it?
Well, even if they would create a big wave if they did it under the ocean, but you'd also see a mass dying of fish washed up on the shore. Even if they did it in the middle of the Atlantic, there would be somebody on Google Earth would see it. They couldn't block something like that. There are fishing lines, there are airplanes, there's an electromagnetic pulse, all kind of planes would be falling down. So I don't believe that actually happened. I believe that's a dramatization to create look, it almost happened. The thing is, if something like that did happen, because people are now aware of these things, it would be a declaration of war. And in my experience, you have to know the other side, their psychology. And they go by the so-called art of war of Sun Tzu that says the wars are best won without firing a shot. You have to make your enemy capitulate without even attacking. That's the best strategy. If you've started attacking, then that means you have a 50% chance of losing. And at the same time, you have to make the enemy think that you're constantly going to attack. But if they create a declaration of war, people are going to shift gears in their mentality. Right now, I don't believe the majority of people are asleep. I really don't. Even the ones that seem to be asleep and are arguing are in denial, which is different. Somebody in denial is trying to convince themselves of something because they're afraid to face it. And they're just too much in the air, and there's too much admitted for that to happen. And somebody in denial, basically, once they reach the point when they're painted into a corner and cannot convince themselves anymore that they can actually avoid the problem, then they shift gears and it's a whole other story. They become a cornered animal. And that's dangerous for the people who want to subdue. So they want to weaken people, so even if they become cornered animals, they can't do it properly and will end up chewing off their heads in the process. So I believe and I've always said this, the first thing, and that's how you mentioned the elite stay the course, and the Jewish people. But if you know Jewish history, it's a history of suffering, constant suffering, and then blaming themselves for it because they didn't do it. Some prophet comes up and says, "Well, you didn't obey the rules, so you didn't stay the course enough. So now you're suffering. So stay the course even more." But it's that kind of stubbornness that got them into trouble. They were the only people in the Roman Empire that got genocide. And the Roman Empire was the one that actually created the story that they were an evil people to set an example so nobody else, they cleared the whole Palestine of these people. They left, and they changed the religion. The religion was very different before the diaspora than it was after. They only allowed so many rabbis to live, and then the mystical aspect of the religion went underground. So this is what I want to talk about, basically, not about the socio-political stuff, but that's just a rational example to bring this discussion in. And I'm sorry I didn't, formally cut it off.
It's okay. We're going to go with it as it is. Okay.
So in any case, you have to know the other side, and not just a small group of the other side. Like that's another, because the enemy gives you, and even though we're not violent or want a war or want to, even if we want to do this spiritual people in a spiritual manner, they view us as the enemy and themselves as our enemy. So from that perspective, I will call them the enemy because it's convenient. And the enemy does not wants to know you, and that's proven because the way they, all the surveillance, all the data mining, all the, genetic cataloging, this, that, and the other, all the psychological profiling, they want to know us, but they don't want us to know them. So their greatest motive is for us to be confused as far as what's going on with them, as far as that's concerned. So even if somebody comes up and says, "Well, I know them," unless you're in the family, you don't see any of these guys coming up and really, they'd be killed. If they really said something that was revealing in a credible manner, then they would be disappeared in a way that didn't even look like being disappeared because they don't want to draw attention. So what they do is they put out tidbits of the truth here and there. And you can actually look at history and cross-correlate where those tidbits fit with those aspects of history that are also admitted. But you need discernment to do that. And so we need to know the other side. We need to know not just what psychopathy is psychologically, but there are certain roots of their particular type of psychopathy. And this is what I want to talk about, and it has to do with the unseen. So you can call this Thoughts on the Unseen. It's a very general title, but it's a small one. And it does describe a few things because I'm going to go a little bit across the board on this. I'm bringing up this topic because I've been doing my own research. I've been exploring Western alchemy, from the perspective of yoga and all of this esoteric alchemy. And because it has much information that is useful to people, but especially for me in my own process right now, because it's very detailed. But at the same time, this Western alchemy, the truth of it, is at the root of esoteric Christianity, which has influenced the spirituality of the New Age movement and the so-called elites, all of the secret societies, the Illuminati, the Freemasons, whether they're legit or not legit, and the elite themselves, the core element of the elite. And it goes even further than that, because it's not just one specific Western system that's been Christianized and all of that. It's the fact that esoteric development has played much more of a role in human history than most people think. And if you try to say that, it's one of those things that's incredibly ridiculed today. I mean, the whole idea of UFOs and all that is less ridiculed than the idea that esoteric development and the powers that are developed has been more influential, and the fact that the rulers of the world have been focused on it has been far more influential in history, has been a pivoting, mobilizing force in history since the Egyptians, at least, since Atlantis, if you want to go that far, than anybody considers. And it's not just that, but the fact that there are consequences to esoteric development. The stuff is kept secret for a variety of contradictory reasons. It's kept secret for our own good, because it's like giving a nuclear bomb to a little kid, on the one hand, the advanced stuff, for example, and there's a reason for that, but it's also kept secret to keep it as a monopoly, to keep people from accessing that kind of resource. Insofar as it is not secret, it's the beginning stages, you might say. It's the stuff that's already out, that people have brought up to the surface. The collective is ready for it, shall we say. Like the stuff of, like the Gnostic yoga that I've been presenting in my own way. That's just initial steps that allow you to take further steps because you awaken the inner voice and your own guide and all of this. But the thing is that evolutionary heightening has to do with epigenetic alteration. There's actually a genetic transformation involved, and this has been proven by science, that we do change our genes during our lifetime, and the changes that we make become transferred to our offspring. So when you engage in intense psychophysical transformation, you also change your metabolism. You have a different biochemistry, and that means a different genetic structure. And we're not talking about genes that change how many hands you have, how many fingers you have. We're talking about metabolic type genes, genes that affect the chemistry of your body. It is also known, even though that's a little known fact, that the body has nuclear transmutation going on at a normal basis. This is actually accepted in some circles. It's not completely ridiculed. It's just not bandied about. You have cold fusion basically going on in your body at a small level with those kinds of energies released. So there's a lot of things going on that are really, that people who are into alternative thinking, it's more normal for them to actually explore these things than these other things that channelers basically try to keep us focused upon. That somebody is coming and don't worry about it and they have a plan and this and that. Okay, that's fine. But why don't we spend our time really waking up? I mean, you wake up to the point of what the alternative media tells you, but the alternative media, on the one hand, to a certain degree, is the, shall we say, the radical younger brother of the conventional media. So there may be some truth in there, and there's a lot of it, but there's also a lot of disinformation. And a lot of it is targeted at New Age type people, because they're the ones with the most radical and flexible thinking style. So it's trying to bring the New Age type. First of all, they came up with the label New Age and made it stick. And, the fundamentalists, just drove it home, when it's really not one single thing. The strength of spiritual people is in their diversity, in my opinion. And the fact that nobody wants to live the destiny of the Jewish people. Genocide, again and again, scapegoating, again and again, then coming up and saying, well, you can't talk against this anymore, when they're the ones who have all the bombs pointed at them, and now they're pointing bombs at everybody else, but the ones ruling are the ones who killed them in the first place, or made deals with the Nazis to kill them, and all of this. So, and that's all no. So they're staying the course is, if you're in denial, is really suicidal. The thing is, we need discernment, and it helps us to awaken at deeper levels, and to consider levels of I'm not presenting wisdom, as I said in my other videos, to anybody, and I can't even make people understand. Nobody can do that. That, for one, that would be a violation of free will. It is the responsibility of each of us to tap into our own capacities of understanding and apply them to earn our wisdom. But the fact remains that esoteric development is not understood clearly. It's understood only superficially. And all of these understandings, for example, the Templars, really, the secret that they got was the secret of this kind of alchemy that gave them the power to manifest. Creating gold, touching metals and turning them into gold means touching any circumstance and turning it in your favor. So all of a sudden, when people attain this alchemical, whatever, philosopher's stone, and philosopher means somebody theoretical, it's not a physical thing, and they said it themselves, they have the power to create their own reality. But because it's a warped teaching, the teaching is not complete. Even Jesus had it only partially complete. There were people, Afrocentric people in college I went to in Atlanta that mentioned Moses. You know, if you look at the Egyptian records and the traditions and understand what the initiations that they went through were, Moses went, there were like 40 degrees of initiation. Moses finished the 10th, and then he left. And then he went off somewhere else and got some other kind of wisdom. It was partial and it was adaptive. The point is, if you don't have a devotional, compassionate, open heart when you're doing this, and if you don't have your eyes completely open and the utter courage to face anything thrown at you, I'm not talking physical violence, I mean any presentation, like the stuff they're throwing at us with the misinformation and all of this, but also any thought, any feeling, then you fall off the cliff. It's a razor's edge. And in that sense, the fallout, because of this evolutionary acceleration, instead of the genes that really promote this, happening, you have other genes being activated. Genes that create, it's similar to cancer. Cancer is the body's reaction saying that you're in the wrong environment, you're in the wrong psychology, you're taking the wrong foods, and you're doing it chronically. You're not listening to yourself. You're not doing anything about it. So cancer is the result. It's the final uprising of your own nature, turning into a reflection of the toxic state in which you put yourself. So our world is a reflection of a toxic state that has been accelerated. Nature doesn't the dinosaurs took millions of years to actually go extinct, millions of years of tearing each other apart, of creating more and more predatory and defensive. And I mean, the last dinosaurs were either armor-plated or they had teeth the size of, a basketball player. So, and it was a terrible time because the predatory and the defensive became more and more, it's something that the power mongers worship. Look at all the toy dinosaurs on the market. The whole idea of reptilians, it comes back to that. But the point is that if you move toward evolutionary and internal awakening for the sake of attaining power, or if you don't have enough courage, or are not mature enough, or not loving enough, it's not enough to just be loving, and it's not just enough to be powerful and courageous. There's a whole bunch of requirements that a natural human being, as they mature in life, slowly acquires. Soul experience on Earth. Soul experience in some other dimension is not enough. That doesn't cut it. This is soul experience on Earth brings you to a point where you recognize these qualities. But if that doesn't happen, then the equivalent of psychic cancer develops. And this psychic cancer doesn't just stick to the individual, it resonates into the environment. And the environment itself, at a psychic level, the event structure, the timeline becomes cancerous. So, again, out of all the information, I really often come back to what Bill Brockbrader said about the timeline, and then the fact that he got, very soon afterwards, he got incarcerated. And, this guy, if anybody's sincere, it's this person. But at the same time, he was allowed, in my opinion, to express what he expressed, probably to see how it would come off, if people would buy it. It was probably, the way he digested it was probably, missing a few things, or, there were other things that were a little bit distorted. Who knows? But the fact is, the way it came off, the reaction was, oh, we don't want this kind of information to come out. And it has come out, but it's also been emphasized of, oh, well, the ETs are going to take care of the timeline, or somebody else is going to take care of it. The fact is that the body has an immune system, and that the timeline itself has an immune system. It only goes into a reset event when there is no other choice. And this time, human beings have evolved in order for reset events. One of the reasons we're here is to prevent any future reset events. Early on in our evolution, we had minor reset events. Probably major ones before, but, over time it reached the level of Atlantis, and now it's reaching levels of, genocide, black plagues, things like that. Atlantis was far worse than any black plague. And at the same time, what we're having now, when you have this immune response, all of the toxicity of the cancerous effects of erroneous internal development, is coming to the surface. And this makes the so-called power people, the psychopaths who are mutated, and they're cancerously mutated, and the thought forms are mutated, and they have corrupted the interdimensional, the unseen world with similar mutations. The stories that the world was a paradise at one time, and, that was at the etheric dream time level. The dream time was a paradise. There was an underworld, and that wasn't really such a bad place if you look at all the indigenous myths. Later, the more time went on, the more hellish the underworld became, and the more separated the paradises became until they became far-off heavens that we can't access. The point I'm making is that so-called secret societies have been here for at least since Atlantis, and that the driving force of all human reality creation has been this worked out, because the fact is that those who are so-called good, humanity has not matured enough to reach the point where they can equalize their power with those who are so-called evil or psychopathic or whatever at the esoteric level. This is happening right now in a kind of accelerated push. And the fact is that a saint who is, to all appearances, a wonderful person, but they're in denial and have escapist tendencies, they're actually supporting the psychopath because they're feeding them shadow material. And the psychopath needs suffering because they use shadow material as a resource. But the point is that it's not something that debilitates us if we understand this. We can, in order to understand the cure, we need to understand the disease and to be able to view the situation not just in an esoteric or exoteric manner, but in the way that the two can be combined by saying, yes, the world has esoteric influences, but it has exoteric ones as well, and they interact. There's an interaction going on, and that's where most of us are asleep. And one thing they do not want us to know, which whenever I reach a point that seems to be important, there's always something that, starts coming in the way, and, my mind gets blocked in this. But my basic final point is that what they don't want us to know is that these so-called abilities, well, on the one hand, they don't know enough. And that there's been the whole history where the indigenous people are not innocent. It's not just about Europeans. The whole thing infects. Here's what I wanted to say. We've been talking about creating our own reality. Why can't we create our own reality? Well, because it's been monopolized. And that the techniques of reality creation, the collective habits of it, have been conditioned towards suffering. If you really don't have the power to create your reality, and there are natural blocks within the Earth system as well, but if you don't have the power to create your own reality, you compensate by creating a pyramid scheme. You create an organization where all the followers focus their psychic force through worship, obedience, and adoration, and trust toward a single person or a group of people. And this enhances their force. It also increases the fragmentation in them. But by creating more suffering, they repress any kind of other reaction because the psychic resonance of suffering holds us at bay. That's why most people close their eyes. It's almost an unconscious response where they do know better, they know what's going on, they're well informed, but they don't want to face it because it hurts. and admitting how much it hurts is very important in order to cultivate the internal resilience so we can create our own reality. But we need to stand up and practice it knowing what we're up against. It's not just, okay, let's all get together and pray. We don't need to form a pyramid scheme. We need individually to awaken to the deeper levels of what's going on without rejecting the top levels, and solutions will come through our diversity, in my opinion. I don't see us so much as arguing as working things out. As soon as we start working things out, then somebody's going to come from some media, the mainstream, the alternative, and tell us we don't have any time left, they're going to attack us here, they're going to do this, they're going to collapse the economy. You know, we need to really feel into this and remember that how many more times have we been threatened with imminent destruction every time we started working something out or making a little bit of progress, even to a level of confidence that their own computers and simulators may have detected their, how do they call the yellow pages or the yellow cubes or, the psychics, all of this stuff have detected. And we need to ignore all that because they're at a disadvantage because they have never developed the true higher grades of mastery. That's why they have to compensate. That's why they needed technology to help them. And that's why they're afraid of us, because their own prophecies say, well, it's time for people in the rest of humanity to actually stand up because we've had a lot of soul experience in the last, several millennia. So I'd like to close here my little ramble. I hope I didn't go too far off.
Actually, can you hear me? Yes, it did. Okay. My camera went off a long time ago.
Yeah, I thought
There was a noise, and I didn't associate that with, what's that noise? And then a minute or two after that, I noticed that the camera wasn't working.
Yeah, I thought
the camera went out.
You were really serene there, but you have such a calm expression that I thought you were just meditating. But
no, it froze. It's called a frozen image.
It's a good picture. I didn't hear any noise, and it just went over me. But how much time have we spent talking?
Well, right now it's 32 and a half minutes.
Oh, that's cool.
So, and I don't know if I'm going to cut anything off at the beginning or not. I'll go back and listen, and we'll flow with it. So, thank you. It is what it is, and I appreciate it. And we will continue next Friday. And I will have people living here next Friday. But the time we do it, everybody should be either at work or at school. So I'll be
That's
alone.
Cool. Are you in like a bathroom or something when you're recording this, or in a?
No, I'm sitting at the same place I always sit in my office.
Oh, okay. So
it's a room. This is a room right outside of my bedroom. And the master bathroom is on the other side in the hall. So this is sort of the end of the house that's sort of exclusive. And I've actually put a lock on the door now so that it's keyed. And when I go away, this is not accessible to my grandkids who like to explore. And I don't want them exploring my room. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I don't think we'll have any problems. Anyways, I appreciate you listening. And we'll see what happens next week.
Okay, thank you, Aristo.
Namaste, Ron.
Namaste.